They say teachers are trained to spot patterns. After 15 years grading essays about summer vacations and analyzing Shakespeare's betrayals with bored teenagers, you'd think I'd recognize deception in my own house. But here I was, Cedric Fallon, 42 years old, standing in my bedroom holding evidence that my marriage was nothing but elaborate fiction. The burner phone felt heavier than it should have in my palm. Samsung Galaxy, cheap prepaid model, hidden beneath Alma's yoga mats like some amateur spy thriller prop. The screen lit up with notifications that made my stomach clench. Missing you already. Can't wait for Thursday night. R. Cedric's working late again. Perfect timing. A. Your husband suspects nothing? R. He's too busy grading papers to notice anything. A. I scrolled through months of messages, each one a small explosion in my chest. Photos, too. Nothing explicit, but intimate enough. Alma laughing in restaurants I'd never been to. Rylan's hands on her shoulders at some hotel bar. My wife of 18 years, the woman who complained when I left dishes in the sink, planning elaborate deceptions with our family friend. Rylan Ventor, real estate agent, golf buddy, the guy who helped us refinance the house last year, the man who sat at our dinner table every Sunday, complimenting Alma's cooking while apparently planning to steal my wife. Footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the phone back under the yoga mats and grabbed a stack of student essays, forcing my face into neutral teacher mode. Alma appeared in the doorway, still in her business suit from the wealth management firm where she worked. "How was your day?" she asked, the same question she'd asked for 18 years. But now I heard the careful distance in her voice, the way she avoided my eyes. "Oh, teaching kids to spot irony in literature." I looked up from the papers. Amazing how people can miss what's right in front of them. She nodded absently, already moving toward her closet. "I'm going to shower. Rylan's coming over later to discuss some investment opportunities." "Of course he is." "What's that supposed to mean?" I shrugged. "Nothing. Just seems like he's been coming over a lot lately." "He's helping us plan for retirement, Cedric. Unless you'd prefer to grade papers until you're 70. The shower started running. I stared at the essays in my lap, words blurring together. Jennifer Martinez had written about trust in Romeo and Juliet. Sometimes people betray the ones they claim to love most, she'd written. Smart kid. Smarter than her English teacher, apparently. My phone buzzed. Text from Adam, my best friend and owner of Murphy's Tavern downtown. "Drinks tonight? You look like you need one." I almost laughed. Adam had always been perceptive. We'd known each other since high school, back when I thought I understood how the world worked. Before I learned that your wife could smile at you over coffee while planning her next rendezvous with your friend. "Rain check," I typed back. "Got some research to do." The shower shut off. I heard Alma humming something cheerful, probably thinking about her Thursday night plans. Amazing how happy betrayal could make someone. I walked downstairs to my study, a small room lined with books that had always been my sanctuary. First editions of Stephen King novels, worn paperbacks of Raymond Chandler, shelves of classics I'd collected over the years, stories about people facing impossible situations, finding strength they didn't know they had. The doorbell rang at 7:30, right on schedule. "Cedric," Rylan's voice boomed from the foyer. "How's the word business?" I emerged from my study to find him embracing Alma in what looked like a perfectly innocent hug. But I saw how his hand lingered on her back, how she leaned into him just a fraction too long. "Evening, Rylan. Ready to plan my golden years?" "That's the idea." He grinned, all teeth and confidence. "Alma's been telling me about some opportunities that could really set you both up nicely." "I bet she has." We settled in the living room, Alma bringing coffee while Rylan spread papers across the coffee table. Investment portfolios, retirement projections, all very official looking. I nodded and asked appropriate questions while studying the man who was stealing my life. Rylan was everything I wasn't. Tall where I was average height, athletic where I was soft around the middle from too many years of grading papers with snacks nearby. He drove a BMW, wore expensive suits, closed million-dollar real estate deals while I struggled to get teenagers interested in metaphors. "The key is diversification," he was saying. "Don't put all your eggs in one basket." "Good advice," I said. "Applies to lots of situations." Alma shot me a sharp look. "Cedric's been stressed about work lately." "Teaching's a tough gig," Rylan agreed. "Dealing with other people's kids all day. I don't know how you do it." "Practice. You learn to spot the troublemakers pretty quickly." The conversation continued for another hour, all surface pleasantries while deeper currents flowed beneath. I watched them carefully, cataloging every glance, every casual touch, every moment of shared understanding that excluded me. After Rylan left, Alma was unusually affectionate. She sat beside me on the couch, closer than she'd been in months. I know this retirement planning stuff is boring, she said, but Rylan really knows what he's doing. I'm sure he does. Are you okay? You seem distant tonight. I looked at my wife of 18 years, this woman I'd loved since we were 24, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Just tired. Long day of teaching kids about betrayal in literature. Betrayal? Hamlet today. Tomorrow we start Othello. Amazing how many of Shakespeare's characters get stabbed in the back by people they trust. She kissed my cheek, a quick peck that felt like an apology for sins I wasn't supposed to know about. I'm going to bed early. Don't stay up too late grading. I waited until I heard her bedroom door close, then returned to my study. The burner phone was still upstairs, but I didn't need it anymore. I'd seen enough. My laptop glowed in the darkness as I opened a new document. At the top, I typed, Lesson Plan, Advanced Revenge Strategies. Then I started planning the education of my lifetime. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. 3 days later, I was still playing the oblivious husband while orchestrating what would become the most important lesson I'd ever taught. The burner phone had become my evening reading, each message adding fuel to a fire that burned colder and more focused with every passing hour. Thursday arrived with October rain drumming against the classroom windows. My advanced placement English students were discussing irony in The Cask of Amontillado, and I found myself appreciating Poe's attention to detail in ways I never had before. Mr. Fallon, Jennifer Martinez raised her hand. Why doesn't Fortunato realize what's happening until it's too late? Excellent question, Jennifer. What do you think? He trusts Montresor. He can't imagine someone he considers a friend would hurt him. Exactly. Betrayal works best when the victim never sees it coming. I glanced at the clock. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we understand least. The afternoon dragged. I had papers to grade, but my mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. Alma had mentioned working late again, which according to the burner phone meant dinner with Rylan at the Marriott downtown. I'd confirmed the reservation myself, calling and pretending to be Rylan's assistant. At 5:30, I drove to Murphy's Tavern. Adam was behind the bar, polishing glasses with the methodical precision of a man who'd been serving drinks for 20 years. You look terrible, he said by way of greeting. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Seriously, Cedric, what's going on? You've been weird all week. I ordered a beer and considered my options. Adam had always been trustworthy, and I was going to need allies for what came next. Hypothetically, I said, if you discovered your wife was having an affair, what would you do? Adam set down the glass he'd been polishing. This isn't hypothetical, is it? Not even a little bit. Alma? And Rylan. That piece of garbage. Adam's jaw tightened. How long? Months, from what I can tell, maybe longer. I'm sorry, man. That's rough. The thing is, I'm not devastated. I'm angry. There's a difference. Adam poured himself a shot of whiskey. What are you planning? Nothing illegal, nothing violent, but I'm done being the clueless husband who grades papers while his wife and best friend laugh at him behind his back. You want help? I smiled for the first time in days. Actually, yes, but first I need to make a phone call. I walked outside and dialed Kalia Ventor, Rylan's wife. She answered on the second ring. Cedric, is everything okay? That depends on your definition of okay. Can we meet? There's something you need to know about your husband. Silence stretched between us. Then, where? Murphy's Tavern. Back booth. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Kalia arrived looking like she'd been expecting bad news for months. She was a yoga instructor, all lean muscle and careful composure, but I could see the tension in her shoulders as she slid into the booth across from me. Show me, she said without preamble. I'd printed selected text messages, the ones that made the situation crystal clear without being unnecessarily cruel. She read through them methodically, her expression growing harder with each page. How long have you known? She asked. 3 days. You? I've suspected for weeks. Rylan's been different, happier, more attentive, like he was overcompensating for something. She folded the papers neatly. What do you want to do about it? I want them to face consequences. Real ones. But I want to do it right. Kalia nodded slowly. I've been thinking about divorce anyway. This just makes it easier to justify. I was hoping you'd say that, because I have an idea, and it's going to require some coordination. I outlined my plan while Adam brought Kalia a glass of wine and provided commentary from behind the bar. It wasn't complicated, but it would require precise timing and a willingness to embrace public humiliation as a weapon. The beauty of it, I explained, is that everything we're doing is perfectly legal. We're just sharing information. With everyone, Kalia added. Exactly. Rylan's built his reputation on being trustworthy. Family man, pillar of the community, the guy you want handling your biggest investment. What happens when that image gets shattered? His business collapses, Adam said. Real estate is all about trust. And Alma's not much better. She manages money for half the town's retirees. They tend to be conservative about adultery. Kalia was quiet for a long moment, staring into her wine. Finally, she looked up. When do we start? Tomorrow night. There's a town council meeting about the new school budget. Half the community will be there, including most of Alma's clients and Rylan's potential customers. What do you need me to do? I smiled. Just be yourself, and maybe bring a few props. The next evening, I sat in the Lisbon Falls Community Center watching Mayor Patterson drone about property taxes while my wife and her lover sat 3 rows ahead of me. They weren't sitting together, of course. That would be too obvious. But I caught the meaningful glances, the careful way they avoided looking at each other too often. Alma had told me she was attending to stay informed about education funding. Noble of her, considering she'd never shown interest in school board meetings before. Rylan was there representing several clients who owned rental properties near the school district. I waited until the public comment period, then stood up. I'd like to address the council about trust in our community, I began. Mayor Patterson looked confused. This is about the school budget, Mr. Fallon. In a way, it is. See, I teach high school English, and one of the things I try to teach my students is the importance of integrity, how your reputation is the most valuable thing you own. I pulled out my phone. But lately, I've been wondering if we're setting a good example for our kids. Alma had turned around, her face pale. Rylan was staring at me with the expression of a man watching a train wreck in slow motion. For instance, I continued, what message does it send when married adults sneak around behind their spouses' backs? When people who are trusted with other people's money and property violate that trust in their personal lives? The room was getting uncomfortable now. People were shifting in their seats, looking around to see who I might be talking about. Cedric, Alma said quietly, maybe we should discuss this at home. Oh, I think this is exactly the right place to discuss it. I held up the phone. See, I've got some text messages here that I think the community might find interesting. Messages between 2 people who've been lying to their spouses, their friends, and their clients. Kalia stood up from the back of the room. I think I'd like to hear those messages. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop in the sudden stillness. Kalia, Rylan said, his voice cracking slightly. What are you doing here? Supporting my husband, or the man I thought was my husband? She walked down the aisle, divorce papers in her hand. Until I learned about his Thursday night investment meetings. I started reading selected text messages aloud, my teacher's voice carrying clearly through the silent room. Nothing explicit, nothing that would traumatize children, but enough to make the situation crystal clear to everyone present. Alma stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're embarrassing yourself, Cedric. Am I? Because it seems to me like you and Rylan are the ones who should be embarrassed. Rylan tried to salvage the situation. Look, everyone, this is just a misunderstanding between friends. Friends don't usually book hotel rooms together, Kalia said, dropping the divorce papers on his lap, or send pictures of their lunch dates to each other while their spouses are at work. The crowd was buzzing now, whispers spreading like wildfire through the room. I recognized most of the faces. Alma's clients, Rylan's customers, people who'd trusted both of them with significant financial decisions. Mayor Patterson was banging his gavel, trying to restore order. Perhaps we should return to the budget discussion. Actually, I said, I think this is very relevant to the budget discussion. After all, we're talking about funding education, and education is all about learning consequences for your actions. I walked over to where Alma was standing, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. The thing about teaching literature, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, is that you learn how these stories end. The cheaters get exposed, the liars face consequences, and the people who thought they were smarter than everyone else discover they're not as clever as they believed. Alma grabbed her purse and headed for the exit, pushing past neighbors and friends who were staring at her with mixtures of shock and disappointment. Rylan followed, leaving Kalia standing there with a satisfied smile on her face. Well, Mayor Patterson said weakly, shall we return to the budget proposal? But the real business of the evening was already done. By morning, everyone in town would know about Alma and Rylan's affair. By the end of the week, the consequences would start rolling in like a tide. I sat back down, pulled out my gradebook, and made a note. Lesson in consequences, successfully delivered. The education was just beginning. The fallout started before I even made it home from the town meeting. My phone was buzzing with text messages from colleagues, neighbors, and people I barely knew. Word travels fast in a small town, especially when it involves public humiliation and adultery. Alma's car wasn't in the driveway when I pulled up. I found her in the kitchen, pacing like a caged animal, her phone pressed to her ear. "No, Mother, it's not what it looked like," she was saying. "Cedric had some kind of breakdown at the meeting." I poured myself a glass of water and waited for her to finish the call. When she hung up, she turned on me with fury I'd never seen before. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. "That was consequences," I replied calmly. "Something you seem to have forgotten about. You humiliated me in front of the entire town." "No, Alma, you humiliated yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it." She stared at me like I was a stranger. "Who are you? This isn't like you, Cedric." "You're right. The old Cedric would have confronted you privately, would have asked for counseling, tried to work things out, been reasonable and understanding." I set down my water glass. But the old Cedric didn't know his wife was planning to steal his inheritance. Her face went white. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder I'd labeled Research. Over the past week, I'd done more investigating than I'd ever done for any lesson plan. Bank records, property documents, investment portfolios. All the financial information that Alma thought I was too distracted to pay attention to. "My father's land," I said. "The 40 acres he left me when he passed away 5 years ago. The property you convinced me to put in both our names for tax purposes. Turns out you and Rylan have been planning to sell it to a development company for 3 times what it's worth. That's not... I found the preliminary contracts, Alma, signed by both of you, dated 3 months ago, right around the time your affair started getting serious." She sank into a chair, the fight going out of her. "It was just business, Cedric. We were going to split the profits. After divorcing me and leaving me with nothing. You would have gotten half in the divorce settlement. Half of what was already mine to begin with. How generous." I showed her the documents I'd found, the carefully orchestrated plan to manipulate me out of the most valuable thing my family had ever owned. The affair wasn't just about romance or excitement, it was about money. My money. "This is why I'm not feeling guilty about tonight," I continued. "This is why I'm not interested in counseling or working things out or any of the other reasonable responses you might expect." My phone rang. Adam's name on the caller ID. "You need to get down to Murphy's," he said. "Rylan's here, and he's not handling things well." I looked at Alma, who was staring at the financial documents with the expression of someone watching their life collapse in real time. "I'll be back," I said. "Don't wait up." Murphy's Tavern was more crowded than usual for a Friday night. Word about the town meeting had spread, and people were gathering to discuss the drama over drinks. I found Rylan at the end of the bar, already several beers deep and getting louder with each one. "There he is," Rylan announced when he saw me. "The great detective. How's it feel to destroy 2 marriages in one night?" "Pretty good, actually," I said, taking the stool next to him. "How's it feel to get caught?" "This isn't over, Cedric. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you're messing with." Adam appeared between us, a towel in his hands and warning in his eyes. "Let's keep this civil, gentlemen." "Civil?" Rylan laughed bitterly. "Your buddy here just ruined my life over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the photos I'd taken of the text messages. Which part was misunderstood? The hotel reservations? The plans to sell my father's land? Or the part where you called me too stupid to notice what's happening in my own house? Rylan's face flushed red. "You went through private messages. Messages on a phone hidden in my house. A phone paid for with money from our joint account. I signaled Adam for a beer. Technically, I was just reviewing my own purchases." The bar had gotten quieter, other patrons listening to our conversation with the fascination of people watching a car accident. I recognized several faces, clients of Rylan's, parents of my students, people who trusted both him and Alma with important decisions. "You want to know the really funny part?" I continued. "I probably would have agreed to sell the land if you just asked me honestly. Dad always said it was too much property for one person to maintain." "Then why?" "Because you decided to steal it instead. You and my wife figured you'd manipulate me, cheat me, and laugh about it afterward." I took a sip of beer. "That was your mistake." Rylan stood up abruptly, swaying slightly. "This conversation is over." "Actually, it's just getting started." I pulled out a manila folder. "See, I spent today making some phone calls. Turns out several of your recent clients are very interested in your flexible approach to marriage contracts. His face went pale. What did you do? I shared some information. Professional courtesy, you might say. For instance, the Hendersons were fascinated to learn that their trusted real estate agent doesn't honor his commitments. They're reconsidering their listing. You can't. And the Patels decided they'd prefer an agent who doesn't lie to people close to him. Hard to trust someone with $1 million transaction when he can't be honest with his own wife. I opened the folder and spread out printed emails, cancellation notices, requests for new representation, a week's worth of systematic destruction of Rylan's professional reputation. The beauty of small-town business, I explained to the listening crowd, is that it's all about relationships, trust, reputation. When people start questioning your character, the rest falls apart pretty quickly. Rylan grabbed for the papers, but Adam's hand clamped down on his wrist. I think you've had enough to drink, Adam said quietly. Time to go home. This is harassment, Rylan shouted. I'll sue you for defamation. With what money? I asked. Your business is collapsing, your wife is divorcing you, and I'm pretty sure the IRS is going to be very interested in some of those cash transactions you've been hiding. That last part was a bluff, but the way Rylan's face went white told me I'd hit close to something real. Adam escorted him to the door while I finished my beer and accepted congratulations from several patrons who'd apparently been waiting years for someone to take Rylan down a peg. Small towns have long memories, and it seemed like he'd been cutting corners for longer than I'd realized. My phone buzzed with a text from Kalia. Phase 1 complete. Ready for Phase 2? I smiled and typed back. Let's finish this. The weekend brought a parade of consequences that unfolded with the inevitability of a Greek tragedy. Alma's clients started calling, asking pointed questions about her judgment and requesting transfers to other financial advisors. Rylan's real estate signs started disappearing from yards around town as listings got pulled and new agents got hired. But the real masterpiece was still to come. Sunday morning, I was grading papers when Alma emerged from the guest room where she'd been sleeping since Friday night. She looked like she hadn't slept much. We need to talk, she said. I'm listening. I want to work this out. What happened with Rylan was a mistake, but our marriage is worth saving. I set down my red pen and looked at my wife of 18 years. Is it? Of course it is. We have history together. A life. We had a life. Past tense. I pulled out a legal document I'd been saving for this moment. I filed for divorce yesterday. You'll be served with papers tomorrow. Cedric, please, don't do this. I'm not doing anything, Alma. I'm just refusing to pretend anymore. She tried tears next, then anger, then bargaining. But I'd spent too many years teaching teenagers to be manipulated by emotional theatrics. I listened politely and graded papers while she cycled through every argument she could think of. Finally, she played her last card. Fine, she said. But I'm not making this easy for you. I want half of everything, including your precious land. I smiled and pulled out another folder. About that? Turns out there's a problem with the deed. What kind of problem? The kind where you never actually owned any part of it. See, I had a lawyer review the documents when I found out about your little development scheme. Apparently the transfer was never properly filed. Some kind of clerical error. Her mouth fell open. That's impossible. I thought so too. But then I remembered that you handled all the paperwork, and when I checked with the county clerk's office, they had no record of your name being added to the deed. I shrugged. Honest mistake, I'm sure. It wasn't a mistake, of course. I'd quietly had the transfer reversed through a legal loophole my lawyer had discovered, but Alma didn't need to know that. You can't do this, she whispered. Actually, I can. It's my land, Alma. It always was. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Kalia's car in the driveway. Right on time, I said, getting up to answer the door. Kalia entered carrying a large cardboard box, which she set on the coffee table with a satisfied smile. What's in there? Alma asked. Evidence, Kalia replied. Photos, receipts, hotel records, credit card statements, everything documenting your affair with my soon-to-be ex-husband. What are you planning to do with that? I opened the box and started pulling out carefully organized files. We're going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you and Rylan really are. This is insane, Alma said. You're both having nervous breakdowns. Are we? Kalia asked. Because it seems to me like we're just refusing to be victims anymore. I pulled out a stack of flyers I'd printed at school. Tomorrow morning, these are going up on every bulletin board in town. Coffee shops, grocery stores, the library, the community center. Alma snatched one of the flyers and read it, her face growing paler with each line. Community alert. Financial advisor and real estate agent engaged in fraud. she read aloud. Residents advised to review all recent transactions for irregularities. It's all true, I said. Documented and verified. You're destroying innocent people's lives. Innocent? Kalia laughed. You were planning to steal Cedric's inheritance and leave him with nothing. How is that innocent? The argument continued for another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. By Monday morning, everyone in town would know the full extent of Alma and Rylan's deception. Their reputations would be ruined, their businesses destroyed, their social standing obliterated. As I watched my wife of 18 years realize that her carefully constructed life was falling apart, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The lesson was almost complete. Monday morning brought the kind of crisp October weather that made teaching almost pleasant. I arrived at school early, coffee in hand, ready to face whatever consequences my weekend activities might have generated. Principal West was waiting in my classroom, perched on the edge of my desk with the expression of a man trying to solve a complicated puzzle. Morning, Cedric. Interesting weekend? Educational, I replied, hanging up my jacket. How can I help you, Bill? I've been getting phone calls. Parents, school board members, people asking questions about your public presentation Friday night. I started writing the day's lesson plan on the whiteboard. Consequences in literature, when characters face the truth. What kind of questions? The kind where they want to know if you're having some sort of breakdown. The kind where they're concerned about your judgment. I turned to face him. Are you concerned about my judgment, Bill? Honestly? No. I've known you for 10 years, and you're one of the most level-headed teachers I've ever worked with. He paused. But what you did Friday night was pretty dramatic, even for someone dealing with a cheating spouse. Sometimes drama is the only thing that gets people's attention. The school board is meeting tonight. Your name is going to come up. I nodded. I figured it would. Are you planning to defend me or throw me under the bus? That depends. Are you done with the public confrontations? The truth is already out there, Bill. Everything else is just cleanup. The first bell rang, and students started filtering into the classroom. Principal West stood up, straightening his tie. For what it's worth, he said quietly, most people think Alma and Rylan got what they deserved. But be careful, Cedric. This kind of thing can spiral out of control pretty quickly. Thanks for the warning. The day proceeded normally until lunch, when Jennifer Martinez approached my desk with the careful expression of a student about to ask a personal question. Mr. Fallon, are you okay? I'm fine, Jennifer. Why do you ask? My mom was at the town meeting Friday night. She said you and your wife are getting divorced. I set down my sandwich and gave her my full attention. Sometimes adults make mistakes, Jennifer. When that happens, there are consequences. Like in the stories we read? Exactly like in the stories we read. She nodded thoughtfully. My dad cheated on my mom last year. She didn't do anything dramatic like you did, but she divorced him anyway. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. He was a jerk, and now she's happier. Jennifer smiled. Sometimes the consequences are good things, right? Sometimes they are. After school, I drove downtown to check on the aftermath of our weekend campaign. The flyers were still posted around town, though a few had been torn down. Murphy's Tavern was busy for a Monday afternoon, filled with people discussing the ongoing drama. Adam was behind the bar, polishing glasses with the satisfied expression of a man who'd backed the winning team. How's business? I asked. Booming. Turns out public scandal is good for the tavern trade. He poured me a beer without being asked. Rylan came by this morning. Oh? Wanted to know if I'd help him reason with you. I told him I was fresh out of reason where lying cheaters were concerned. How did he take that? About as well as you'd expect. Started ranting about how you'd ruined his life over a harmless flirtation. I laughed. Harmless flirtation. Is that what we're calling fraud now? Speaking of which, you might want to see this. Adam handed me a copy of the local newspaper, folded open to the business section. The headline read, Local Real Estate Agent Under Investigation for Financial Irregularities. I scanned the article, which detailed complaints from several of Rylan's former clients about questionable transactions and missing escrow funds. The State Real Estate Commission had opened an investigation. Looks like your little publicity campaign got some official attention, Adam said. I had nothing to do with this. Maybe not directly. But once people started looking closely at Rylan's business practices, they found some interesting things. My phone buzzed with a text from Kalia. Emergency. Can you meet me at the house? Something's happened. I drained my beer and headed for the door. If anyone asks, I was never here. Good luck, Adam called after me. I found Kalia standing in her front yard, watching two men in suits load boxes into an unmarked sedan. Her face was grim, but not particularly surprised. IRS? I asked. FB, Financial Crimes Division. She gestured toward the house. Turns out Rylan's been running more than just a real estate business. Money laundering? Among other things. They found records of cash transactions, offshore accounts, payments to shell companies. She shrugged. I always wondered how we could afford the BMW and the country club membership on a small-town real estate agent's income. Did you know? I suspected something wasn't right, but I thought it was just tax evasion, not whatever this is. One of the FBI agents approached us, badge in hand. Mrs. Venter, we're going to need you to come downtown for questioning. Am I under arrest? Not at this time. We just need to clarify your knowledge of your husband's business activities. Kalia looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Looks like our little revenge plot just got a lot more complicated. After she left with the agents, I sat in my car for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. What started as a simple plan to expose an affair had apparently uncovered a federal crime. The consequences were spiraling far beyond anything I'd intended. My phone rang. Alma's number. Cedric, we need to talk. Right now. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at the house. I found Alma pacing the living room, more agitated than I'd ever seen her. She barely looked up when I walked in. They came to my office today, she said. FBI agents, asking questions about Rylan, about our relationship, about financial transactions. What did you tell them? The truth. That we were having an affair, that we planned to sell your father's land, that I didn't know anything about his other business activities. Did they believe you? I don't know. They took my computer, my files, everything. She finally looked at me, and I saw fear in her eyes. Cedric, what if I'm involved in something I don't understand? For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt a flicker of sympathy for my wife. Whatever else she'd done, she didn't deserve to be caught up in federal crimes. What do you need from me? I need you to tell them I wasn't involved in Rylan's business, that the affair was personal, not professional. Is that true? Yes. I swear to you, Cedric. I had no idea he was doing anything illegal. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. After 18 years of marriage, I could usually tell when she was lying. This time, she seemed genuinely terrified. I'll tell them the truth, I said. That you're many things, but you're not a criminal. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This doesn't change anything between us. I know. The next morning brought a knock on my door at 6 a.m. 2 FBI agents, polite but insistent, wanting to discuss my knowledge of Rylan Ventor's business activities. I made coffee and answered their questions honestly. Yes, I knew about the affair. No, I had no knowledge of any financial crimes. Yes, I'd orchestrated the public exposure of the relationship. No, I hadn't intended to trigger a federal investigation. Mr. Fallon, the lead agent said, we appreciate your cooperation, but we need to ask you to keep this investigation confidential while it's ongoing. Does that mean no more public confrontations? It means exactly that. After they left, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and contemplating the unintended consequences of my revenge plot. I'd wanted to expose Alma and Rylan's betrayal, to make them face social and professional consequences for their actions. Instead, I'd apparently uncovered a criminal enterprise that could send Rylan to federal prison. The phone rang. Principal West. Cedric, I need you to come in early today. We have a situation. What kind of situation? The kind where parents are calling to ask if their children's English teacher is involved in an FBI investigation. I closed my eyes. I'll be right there. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, explanations, and damage control. The school board was concerned about publicity. Parents were worried about their children's safety. Local media was starting to ask questions. By evening, I was exhausted and questioning every decision I'd made over the past 2 weeks. I'd wanted justice, consequences, a reckoning for the people who'd betrayed me. Instead, I'd created a mess that was spinning far beyond my control. But as I sat in my study that night, grading papers and trying to restore some normalcy to my life, I realized something important. I didn't regret it. Alma and Rylan had made their choices. They'd decided to lie, cheat, and steal. The fact that their deception ran deeper than I'd realized wasn't my fault. I'd simply refused to be a victim. And sometimes that's the most important lesson of all. 6 months later, I was standing in my classroom after the final bell, packing up another year's worth of lesson plans and student essays. The FBI investigation had concluded with Rylan pleading guilty to money laundering and tax evasion. He'd received 3 years in federal prison and lost everything: his business, his house, his reputation. Alma had been cleared of any criminal wrongdoing, but her career in wealth management was over. No one in town would trust her with their money after everything that had happened. She'd moved to Portland, started over with a new job and a studio apartment. Our divorce had been finalized in February. I kept the house and my father's land. She kept her retirement account and her car. We divided 18 years of shared possessions with the cold efficiency of strangers. Kalia had also been cleared by the FBI and had used her settlement from divorcing Rylan to open a yoga studio downtown. We'd become friends during the investigation, bonded by our shared experience of betrayal and revenge. Principal West knocked on my classroom door. All packed up? Just about. Hard to believe another year is over. Any regrets about staying? The school board had ultimately decided to keep me on, concluding that my personal drama didn't affect my ability to teach. My students' test scores remained high, and several parents had actually praised my real-world lessons about consequences. None at all, I said. This is where I belong. Good. Because I have some news. The district is creating a new position, Director of Character Education. They want someone to develop curriculum about ethics, integrity, and personal responsibility. I looked up from my packing. Are you offering me the job? I'm saying the job was created with you in mind. I thought about it for a moment, a chance to teach the lessons I'd learned the hard way, to help students understand that actions have consequences, that integrity matters, that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself even when it's difficult. When do I start? September. But first, enjoy your summer. You've earned it. That evening, I met Adam and Kalia at Murphy's Tavern for what had become our weekly tradition. The 3 survivors of the great scandal of Lisbon Falls sharing drinks and war stories. So, Kalia said, raising her glass, what should we toast to this week? New beginnings? Adam suggested. Justice served, I countered. How about lessons learned? Kalia said. We clinked glasses and drank to all of it. New beginnings, justice served, and lessons learned the hard way. As I walked home through the quiet streets of my small town, I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the revenge, the unintended consequences, the ultimate resolution. I'd lost a marriage, but I'd found my self-respect. I'd lost friends, but I'd discovered who my real friends were. I'd lost my illusions about trust and loyalty, but I'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I could handle whatever life threw at me. The next morning, I started planning my first character education curriculum. The opening lesson would be about irony in literature, and how sometimes the most important stories are the ones we live ourselves. After all, the best teachers are the ones who've learned their lessons the hard way, and I had plenty of lessons to share.